on the road, and I might try to rush through this a little more than normal because it is hot and my AC does not work, and if I have the windows open, of course that'll be too noisy. So to get straight to the point, I want to talk about accepting errors, pointing out mistakes and accepting mistakes that other people point out to you. I think that if you are to notice your own error, then I think it's usually a lot easier to accept and to do something about. You have already come to terms with the fact that it is an error, is part of it. You've come to terms with that on your own time, and then you can choose to do something about it or not. But if someone else is pointing out the error to you, it's a little different. And I think that's silly. And I think that this is a really loaded notion that we'll get into some details of, but I don't think it's very practical at all. If our goal as people, which this doesn't go for everyone, if our goal as people is to better ourselves, which is basically how I define a person who's worth something versus a person who's not. Just keeping it real. If your goal is to better yourself, then you should want to know if you have made an error and how you can fix that error. If you're making a mistake or if you're doing something that's not beneficial for anybody, and it's a factual thing, not just an opinion, because that's a different category, I feel, then you would want to know those things, and you should welcome people correcting you. With that, there are people who may not express things the best way, and honestly, I think that it doesn't matter how someone expresses it. You shouldn't get defensive about the error. You can correct that person in turn on how, like, hey, maybe yelling and screaming isn't a great way to communicate stuff. I hear what you're saying. I acknowledge my error. I understand the mistake I made, and I will do better, and it's something that I want to work on because whatever the reason is. But in turn, you have made an error also in that you haven't contributed to this conversation being a healthy one or a safe space for learning, or you're not creating an environment that gives me a great opportunity to actually hear you because you were so elevated or just rude or whatever. However, getting defensive, even if someone's approach is wrong, if the facts are true, if the error they have pointed out is legitimate, that's what we need to pay attention to. And I feel like way too often do people point out, or they get defensive and say, well, your approach was wrong. Who cares? Like, you can talk to them about that later, but someone saying like, hey, this is the thing, you bunged up, this needs to get fixed. If they're very abrupt and direct, whatever. That person is helping you out right now. Whether it's their intention to or not, they are helping you out. They're not leading you astray. Maybe part of their intention is just so they can feel better than you by pointing out that you made a mistake. Okay, cool. But you are giving it value, a negative value, when it's an inherently positive thing. Don't give an inherently positive thing, like someone pointing out your mistake that you can now learn from. Don't give it a negative value because their approach or their intention. Sometimes intentions just don't matter that much, and people prioritize them way too much. So it's just this thing that I know is so culturally ingrained, and something I really dislike is just this thing of like, I don't feel like I'm allowed to tell people when they've made certain mistakes. And it's not altruistic. A lot of the times that I want to point that out, it's because it would benefit me, but also it could benefit them. The problem is if it's factual or if it's opinion, then it gets into the weeds there of like, that's not actually a mistake. This is just something that you think would be better, and maybe it's not inherently factually better, but it's just an opinion. But anyway, I just think that too many people are so, again, just getting defensive over it doesn't help. You can take it in, you acknowledge it, and then you can say like, hey, but that approach isn't great, and like I'd be much more receptive to having these conversations and not feel bad about them or elevated or whatever, or I wouldn't have ill feelings towards you if you were to approach this differently, and whatever. It's just about, I just think that direct communication should happen more often, because I think it's a detriment to everyone that we've got these social constructs of like, you gotta be really careful on how you approach people, and like, yeah, don't be rude. Like, the quick example I'll give, the Westboro Baptist Church does all these really crappy public showings of them, like, I don't know what to call them. They're trying to share their message in a very disrespectful, albeit possibly hateful way, because they're saying they're doing it out of love for their fellow man, because these are things, sorry about the noise, it's way too hot and I'm slowing down here, so they say that they do it out of love because they're supposed to love everyone in the Bible, in the Christian faith. And they're like, we do love these people. That's why we're telling them they're going to go to hell if they don't change. That's why we're going to go picket funerals and use really abusive language. And no, obviously I'm not saying that abuse is okay. I'm saying that if there's a factual error that has been made and someone is pointing it out to you, or someone's trying to help you, that's our first priority. I mean, first you determine whether it's factual or not, or if it's an opinion or not. Then you can accept that with grace, and then in return possibly communicate to them a better thing. But like, I'm not asking you to tolerate abuse. That's different. But someone just being direct and being like, that's not how you do that, I'll show you a better way to do that, I don't think it's necessary. And I hate that this is just culturally, like, again, I would rather efficiency over politeness any day, function over design. So I don't need my cashier to chat with me about the weather. It's in fact inefficient, and their job is to like get me through this transaction and do what they need to do on their end. And if they just go through the very basics, I don't need a lot of fluff. I don't need someone being really bubbly asking me a bunch of questions. In fact, that's not their job. I don't think their job is to be rude to you while they are efficient, but I think, again, my priority is on function over design in this case. In most cases, I would say, it's just like, do the job that you're supposed to do. I don't need it made up, like all made up, and like put some sugar on it and whatever else. Just do the thing you need to do, and I will be super thankful that you're able to complete the task in a quick and efficient, thorough, complete manner. That's what you're there for. That's what I need you there for. That's what I'd appreciate. That's your job description, etc. But again, it doesn't mean that you take abuse and that's okay. It just means that you don't want to berate somebody, because that's the other thing, is then it's not an effective way of communicating your message, and you're making an error and that person can't receive it as well. But my big thing is just that I think we need to receive criticism better, and that is a priority that should be in our lives if we actually want to be better people. If our concern is not about self-betterment, then it doesn't matter. This whole conversation doesn't matter whatsoever. But if you claim that your goal in life is to better yourself, then stop getting defensive when people correct you. Take criticism, look forward to criticism. If someone is not super graceful about it, then that sucks, but you can be getting something positive out of that. Don't give it a negative value.